For more on President Trump's geopolitical challenges at the UN this week, let's welcome Chris Christie, who served as Attorney General and Governor of New Jersey. This week, he's launching the Christie Institute for Public Policy in partnership with Seton Hall University School of Law. Governor, thanks for joining us. You do have a relationship with one of the networks, and I figure that prepared you for pretending you and Cuomo could possibly get along on anything?
I will tell you, you'll see it this week. In 7 years with Andrew Cuomo, not only didn't we have a fight, we never had a crossword. It's possible. Now, we disagree on a ton of stuff, but we knew that our relationship was about building more infrastructure in New York and New Jersey. And when you look at all the projects that are going on, it's all product of that relationship. The new LaGuardia Airport that's being done, the PATH train that's going to go from downtown, from the Trade Center area, directly to Newark Airport, the new Goethals Bridge, the new Bayonne Bridge. All those things were things that would not have been done without Cuomo and I working with each other, agreeing to work with each other.
So obviously you compartmentalize.
You have
things.
to. I mean, and that's what people expect you to do. But that's part of what drives me crazy about the current political scene and why we started this institute. Is you can disagree on philosophical issues and governance issues, but you still have an obligation to get things done for the people who elect you. And what's going on in Washington and in many state capitals now, and even in state capitals like mine, where there's one-party rule, they can't get along with each other. So it's about reminding people, by bringing people who have done it into this institute every quarter to speak about it, that you can get things done and that we have an obligation to do it, and that what's going on in Washington and in state capitals right now is unacceptable.
You see that we do a 3-hour show every day. Do we not get it done?
That's exactly right.
Do we not get it done?
You totally get it done, and that's the point. And by the way, Amy wouldn't give the traffic report. I'll give it. It sucks. So there's the traffic report for everybody. The traffic sucks.
This week you don't really want to be on the island
come in
Manhattan.
here. Listen. If you want to come at Christmas rather than come during UN week, it's
come
better.
And hang out around the tree.
Yeah, it's much better than UN week.
It's easier.
UN week is brutal.
Where were you on the whole China trade thing all through this? Do you think this was a worthy fight to take on?
I do think it's a worthy fight for him to take on for two reasons. One, because it's who he is. Right? If you look at Donald Trump's philosophy over 30 years, there's not a ton of consistency. But one area where he has been consistent for 30 years is on trade. And I think, listen, we kind of acknowledge that China's done all these things. We acknowledge they steal IP with impunity. Right. We acknowledge that they take unfair advantage of the trade situation. And everyone says, but when they get better, they get bigger, they'll be better. Well, they haven't been. They just continued the same course. So someone needed to stand up to them.
Governor, the question, though, that I would ask is, I think almost everybody agrees that it's worthy to take on the Chinese and try to deal with these issues. I think the question is, how do you deal with it? And whether this approach is the right one.
Well, we've tried almost every other approach, Andrew, that hasn't worked, right? Now he's trying the confrontational approach. And quite frankly, it's the right time to take this approach and to try it because our economy domestically is so strong. If we weren't as strong domestically as we are, we couldn't afford this fight.
How do you think this is playing throughout the country, and specifically in the real swing states that matter to him most?
I think it's playing well for him. I think it's one of his real political advantages because people do feel like the Chinese have treated us unfairly. And they want someone who's willing to stand up to that and to fight for them. And I think most of those folks feel like he's fighting for them on this issue.
Right.
There's a lot of the other issues where it's harder for him out in the country. And you see some of that in some of the polling that you see. But on this issue, I think it's good.
What do you think, from a timing perspective, has to happen ahead of the election on this issue? And how do you think the Chinese on the other end are trying to play it?
Well, the Chinese are going to try to wait it out. I mean, if you're the Chinese, why wouldn't you try to wait it out?
Does the president need or want a deal ahead of the election?
I think the president wants the right deal ahead of the election. I think he's willing to forego a deal. Listen, this is what I mean about philosophically. You know, Donald Trump's been in a whole bunch of different spots philosophically in politics over 30 years. But this one place, he has been there, whether it was with Japan in the 80s or now with Mexico then in the 90s and now with China in the 2000s. He's been in the same spot. I don't think he can afford to back off now. He's got to ride this out.
And how do you think the Democrats play this? Because one of the things that's so interesting is watching Elizabeth Warren, as we talked about it, almost move right of him on China.
Yeah, they're cornered. Listen, this is why it's a good political issue for him, because the Democrats cannot provide contrast. They can't say, "Oh no, we'd go easier on China." Their private sector union supporters would go crazy over that. You know that they can't afford to go anywhere to the left of Trump on this. So that's why it's both a good political issue for him and I believe, the right issue from a trade perspective to do. Now, we have to come to an agreement at some point, but I don't think the president should give this away. And I think people believe he's fighting for the right cause. They believe on this issue, he's not just fighting to fight. He's fighting for something that's more important.
We, are loath to discuss pure politics, obviously. But when I woke up this morning, I checked the futures based on some of the whistleblower events from yesterday, and based on the latest Washington Post revelation that the aid to Ukraine a week before the phone call, that the aid was put on hold, however many million it is. So I looked at the futures, and the futures do not indicate a constitutional crisis as of yet. Do you think this is a problem, A, for Donald Trump, and does Vice President Biden emerge a winner from this brouhaha, or are they both damaged from this?
Well, listen, I think for Biden, it's a short-term win and a long-term problem. Right. So in the short term, anytime you get a bunch of Democrats in a contested Democratic primary who have to stand up for the front runner and say this is awful what Trump is doing to Biden, that's good for Biden, because it helps to bring some more people to him. And to the extent that he can look victimized by this is helpful to him.
Can any Democrat say, wow, what were you doing in Ukraine? Can Elizabeth Warren say, wow?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Now, if
later,
it gets
later they can.
Well, and here's the problem. The problem long term for him is this will be an issue that's going to be discussed in 2020. Now, whether it's discussed in February of 2020 in Iowa and New Hampshire, or whether it's not discussed until July or August of 2020.
The truth is, it should be dissscussed about President Trump, and it should be discussed about
Biden.
It should be.
Well, it already is being discussed about Trump. Listen, I mean, all you've heard about so far really is about Trump's conduct, Trump's actions on withholding aid, potentially.
Although I have seen that Biden soundbite of him sitting on that panel. He loves to talk sometimes.
Does.
Joe.
Yep.
And just saying, bragging that they said, you can't withhold $1.5 billion because you're vice president. He goes, really? You watch me, because I got the president. The president's got my back on this. And you're not, if that guy's not fired in 6 hours, you're not, they got him on tape saying that now.
And listen, listen, part of what makes me laugh here is the idea that this isn't done politically and hasn't been done for a long time, that the United States hasn't withheld aid to try to push them to do something in another country domestically that we think is in our country's interests, right? So Trump's position is going to be, I can tell you right now, that
corruption.
I'm sending all this aid to Ukraine. There's tons of corruption there. It's not getting to the people and to the cause it's supposed to. And so with this new president, I was telling him, I'm not sending this aid over unless you, in fact, clean up your corruption. That's going to be his position. And by the way, Biden's position is going to be the same thing.
Right.
He can't. How's he going to?
Because there are other countries that wanted that prosecutor gone too.
Well, that's right.
And not about Hunter Biden.
And that's an internal Ukraine issue. But we're saying if you want $1.5 billion in aid, Trump's was $400 million. Biden's $1.5 billion.
Isn't there a fair distinction to be made, though, that given all of the conversation that we had for 2.5 years about Russia collusion and everything else, that talking about instigating something against
for political gain
in the United States should be considered.
Be a lot better if the other thing was true for you.
No, I'm just saying. Look, I think what
if that had worked out better, you know what's amazing?
This was in the same way that I said that I thought the Clinton Foundation stuff was terrible. But if you think that stuff's terrible, then you also have to think the stuff.
Did you see when this phone call happened? It was the day after the Mueller testimony. It's like Trump's like, hey, I'm in the clear. Let me go.
Listen, what it tells you, again and again, is that this president, is going to do whatever he feels like he wants to do, without worrying about what folks like you or Joe or anybody else is going to say about it. And Congress has shown themselves to be completely ineffectual at doing anything to rein that in, even when they have a majority in the House.
So it sounds though like, from a character perspective, you would try to rein it in if you could.
Well, listen, I would love. I've said this to the president a number of times. You don't need to swing at every pitch. I think his biggest weakness as a political candidate is he swings at every pitch. and the one at your head, the one in the dirt, the one 4 feet outside. And it just doesn't make sense in my mind to do that. Now, you know, in the end, we're going to see what this is all about. I think he's going to release part or all of that transcript, and then people are going to see what was really said between the two of them.
So do you think he wins a second term?
I think he's the favorite to win right now.
Was there a spot for you in the second administration?
Who knows? He's offered me a number of spots in this administration.
What would you take?
Well, I'm not going to negotiate with you, Joe, for gosh sakes. I mean, you know, unless you're going to tell me you're going to deliver.
Just asking you if there's one that's more.
Listen,
he could deliver.
The president knows exactly what I would be willing or not willing to do, and I want to try to. I always will be available to try to help the country, but I also have obligations as a husband and a father. And after 15 years of public service, being in the private sector for a little while is not a bad idea for me. That comment was, by the way, from my wife, who's watching, as she does every morning.
She does, yeah.
Yeah, she's a fan. She even likes Andrew.
Seriously?
Yeah, she does.
Hey there.
She likes him as a person.
As a person, yeah. She doesn't always agree with him.
Yeah.
But as a person, she thinks he's a nice guy.
That's how we all feel.
Yeah. Well, then that's part of what the whole Institute stuff is about, is that, you know, you can get along with each other personally and get some stuff done even if you fundamentally disagree philosophically.
Right. This 6 foot space is this means nothing. There's no reason why we're doing that.
Why is it? Why
because
is that?
Becky would be, and she's in Chicago, so she's here.
You're respecting the Becky space? Is that what this is?
Yeah.
That's good. That's very, very reverential.
Thank you. It is.
Both of you.
Otherwise, But you know what? One of us would have to move, and neither one of us is going to move off our position.
Well, that's very true.
He's staying there. I'm staying here. I'm not.
So as you're looking at it from TV, Andrew is to the left.
What if we both move
and Joe
halfway?
is to the right.
We can move halfway.
How about that?
Come on over.
I'm not moving.
If you're both willing to move halfway,
all right,
I'll invite you to the Christie Institute.
Let's try this a little.
See? The Christie Institute already having an impact.
Thank you, sir.
It's already happening.
Great to see you, Governor.
Thank you, Governor.
Joe, thank you.
Good to see you.